What's up, guys? Sticky Side down here, and I am off to the dealership. I have to get the bike serviced. Okay, that felt weird. As I was slowing down to a brake, like with under very minimal braking pressure, my brake felt like it wanted to grab and let go. Like, okay, that's not good. What the heck was that? Under super light braking, like super light, it like grabbed and let go really quick a bunch of times, almost like the ABS kick. I have it shut down to circuit mode, so it only works when it fully locks up. That is weird. And plus, I wasn't going fast enough to turn ABS on, even if it was turned on. Had ourselves a little accident up here. Yep, sure did. Ooh, ow. It's a massive rear end job on that car. But anyways, heading to the dealer. I just bought this bike a little over a month ago, of course, and it's due for its 500-mile service. But first of all, how many of you out there that has ever bought a bike with excitement and said, yay, I'm going to take care of this bike, I'm going to do all the service intervals, I'm going to do everything required to keep this bike up, and you never do, and you just ride it? 10, 15, 20,000 miles later, the bike is pretty much almost on its last leg, because all you've done is oil changes. I've seen bikes where chains don't even get tightened in 10, 15,000 miles, and that thing's slapping all over the place. Bikes are not cheap. Yes, they're fun, they're great, and you can have absolute wonderful time on them, and they can be absolute destruction waiting to happen because you don't take care of them. But always keep up on your intervals. But anyways, I'm going in to have a 500-mile service, which is, they're just going to check it over, make sure everything's tightened and whatever, but mostly for the oil change and, you know, stuff like that. Just, and fluids, see if they're topped off. So few I could do myself. But here's the thing. I could do it myself. I could. But if I'm not absolutely proficient in knowing what to check and everything, and all the things that go with your service intervals, then I'm defeating the purpose of a service interval. Because for one, I don't have a code reader, because when you take your bike in for a service interval, not a check engine light, that's different. A service interval, they actually hook the machine up to the bike and check for codes that may be triggered, that will need to get addressed, which would you know, cause the check engine light to come on, obviously. But they also check to see if there's any updates to your ECU since the last time you brought it in. So if there's an update that causes your bike to run a little better, or whatever the update is for, you're missing out on the update. And if you don't take care of your bike and the service intervals, how long do you honestly think it's going to last? Really, how long? I had my 2015 for 2.5 years before it was stolen, and it had 19,500 miles on it in 2.5 years. And if I didn't take care of it and took it in with its at service intervals, how long do you think that thing would have lasted? You think I could have got 20,000 miles out of it? Probably. But the thing of it is, that bike had a track day at 17,000 miles on it, I think. I did a track day on it, and I beat that bike as hard the day I bought it as the day it was as the day prior to it being stolen. Because, for one, it was my bike and I was just going to do what I wanted, but I also took care of it. And I went to the service intervals like I was supposed to. I even did the big one, the 12,000 mile service valve clearance adjustment. And when I took it in, the tech, the only tech that works on my bike, he said he's never seen such a tight clearance motor in these Triumphs before, as tight as clearance as mine. Mine were, he didn't even need to adjust them. The clearances were so precise and so on point that he said he didn't even need to adjust them because they were all within a thousandths of each other. All three valves, or 3 cylinders, there's more than one valve. All 3 cylinders and all the valves in those cylinders were all within a thousandths clearance of each other. Said there was no adjustment needed. And that was at 12,000, no, I had that done at 15,000 miles, right before I went to the track. And he said there was no adjustment needed on them because they were that, the motor was still that tight. And I run the crap out of that motor, I did. So I didn't care. It was my bike and I was gonna pay the money to fix it. But a lot of people, they get into a bike and they think it's just a bike payment and maybe an oil change every now and then. No, that is not how it goes. I put, in 2.5 years, I put 6 sets of tires on that bike I had because I bought the good tires. Because I wasn't about to buy a cheap tire just because I couldn't afford a good tire. And most of the tires I put on there were the stock rating tires, which was the Pirelli Super Corsa SPs V2s. If any of you know about tires, those tires are stupid expensive. I got, most of the time I got mine through tires, some tire company that always had sales, and it was a reputable one. I can't even remember the name of it. I'll have to link it in the description later. It's a great tire manufacturer, Pirelli tires, and a great tire. Very, very sticky tire. And that's why they stuck it. Oh my gosh, that is horrible that way. That's the direction I'm going. That is so dark. Doggone it, I'm gonna have to put my rain gear on because there's no way I'm gonna live through that without getting wet. But I brought my rain gear just in case. I just did not want to have to wear it. Doggone it. That is horrible that way. I might be stuck in it for the entire ride to my dealer, and it's 90 miles to my dealership, so I'm gonna be riding for about 2 hours in regular weather. And this is gonna be nasty weather. Yeah, I'm gonna have to pull over because it's getting progressively worse. I'm gonna pull up underneath this tree here so I don't get wet much. But anyways, you want to do your maintenance intervals, because if you don't, your bike is gonna have a hard time keeping itself together because you're not doing intervals. And they're not just major intervals. There's some of them are really simple intervals. Like they check suspension. You should do suspension checks. Like, ooh, it's getting hard to see. Suspension checks. Let's see, what else? Your suspension needs oil. Like the front suspension is recommended to change the oil every 10,000 miles for the fork oil. And your shock is recommended every 8,000 miles. So if you're not even doing that, then what's the point? You're just buying a bike to only fall apart a couple thousand miles later, and you're actually wasting a lot of money. Like a lot of money on a bike. You're paying $15,000 for a bike, only to have it fall apart on you, depending on how often you ride, in a couple years. Nobody wants to own a bike that falls apart in a couple years after buying it, because they don't take care of it. But that's usually ends up what usually ends up happening. People just like, it shouldn't need it, or they end up not being able to afford it. That's the biggest problem with maintenance. It gets expensive, like really expensive. Maintenance on a motorcycle is not cheap by any means, and people fail to realize that until after they purchase the bike, and then they're like, oh shoot, this is costing way more than I anticipated. Time I get this gear on, it's gonna be done raining. Putting a wet glove on is not easy when it's already a tight glove. Alright, here we go. Hopefully my GoPro doesn't quit. The back LCD screen has a crack in it, and this rain, depending on how bad it gets, could very well make it go out. But I don't have my good one with me. I just have this one, and I need to turn my ABS back on. So this is probably not a good idea, but I shut the bike off, turn it back on, let it cycle through, fire it up. There we go, got ABS. Feel a little bit safer now that I have ABS. But yeah, you want to make sure you do all your intervals. I mean, you don't have to. You really don't. But it helps a whole lot when it comes to longevity of your motorcycle. If you want to keep that bike around for a while, then maintenance intervals is your friend. I mean, a lot of Harley riders, they rarely ever ride their motorcycle. That's why you got a Harley rider with 10 years on a motorcycle and he doesn't even have 5,000 miles on it, because he almost never rides it. And even those, that kind of mileage is not good on it, because there's nothing being moved. You know, if stuff sits for a very long time, things start to seize up. Yeah, he's gonna start it every now and then, the motor, but what about the bearings and the tires and the belt or chain or the brakes, for that matter? They get spots, like they get I don't know what you would call them, like the tires will get flat spots after sitting for a long time, or dry rot. They're gonna dry rot no matter what after over time, yes, but it's worse when they're just sitting. Tires go bad even quicker when they're just sitting there. They dry rot. And the belt, it might last forever. Who knows? But you keep riding it and putting it away and riding it and putting it away, riding it and putting it away. You got 10 years on a belt. How do I know if it's not going to break or not? Or even a chain, for that matter. Because when you ride it, do you ride it like a grandpa? Or do you hot rod it? And if you hot rod it, it's going to stretch. And then you put it away, it's like, oh man, it's not even ready for an interval yet, for a belt change or a belt tension. I don't even have hardly any miles on it. No, you may not, but those miles that you do have on it, have you ridden it like you stole it? That in itself is going to put excessive wear and tear. And no interval, that's just going to deteriorate that much faster. And plus, the bikes nowadays, when you need a service interval, it throws a wrench light on, just like in a car. It throws a wrench light for a service interval, not a check-in light, a wrench light. It's like, hey, you have a service interval coming up, and mine, it's on, and it's been on. I'm a little overdue for my service, but it's not too bad. I got like 800 miles on it right now. And I bought it June 8th, but didn't start riding it until June, probably about the 14th is when I started riding it. It had 25 miles on it when I bought it. And I started riding it on right about June 14th. And here it is, July 20th. Yeah, July 20th. And I've got almost 800 miles on it already. So yeah, I do a lot of riding. And I don't mind. I love riding. Most people would not be going to their dealership to have a service interval done in the rain. But I don't care. It gets me out on the bike, gets me out of the house, and I can go ride. I think I'm going to lose my hood on this rain gear because I didn't fold it right, and it's catching all the wind and the water. It's going to be like a cup. And when I go to adjust it with it still being on, all that water's probably going to run right down my back, and that's going to suck. So I'm just going to leave it alone for now, and hopefully it will stop raining, and then I can just take it off gingerly so I don't wear all that water down my back. How many of you calculated how much money you spend on your bike in, let's give it 2 years? 2 years, how much money do you think you spend on your bike? I can't tell you how much money I spent on my 2015 in 2 years. I mean, come on, 6 sets of tires. I don't think I missed one service interval that was required. You got a 5,000 or a 500, then 6,000, which 6,000 just an oil change, which I can do myself. That's no problem, but the wrench light's still on. So now you got to go back to the dealer and have them turn the wrench light off, because I'm not going to leave the wrench light on. That's another thing. How many of you ride around, do your own oil change, and try to figure out later how to turn the wrench light off? On a new bike, especially my Triumph, it's not just pushing a couple buttons. I literally have to go to the dealership, and they have to program the wrench light to go off. And then it resets itself to another however many intervals. I think the first one I know is at 500, and the second one's at 6,000. The third one, I don't know when it's at. I think it might be another 6,000. I'm not sure. But I change my oil about every 3,000 miles. So, and I can change my own oil. That's no big deal. But when it comes time for the service light come on, I look at my manual at the intervals of when the wrench light comes on, and I look to see what needs to be done. Things I can do myself, I usually end up doing, because it does bring the price down, like oil change or whatever. Unless they give me a really good deal on an oil change, I'm like, yeah, sure, put it in with the rest of the stuff, I don't care. But most of the time, they don't. Now, if you have a good reputation with your current dealership, like I do, you actually might get a deal, because I go there all the time. These pants for this rain gear are not long enough. It shows the bottom of my pant leg about, I don't know, 4 inches worth, and it is soaked. And pretty soon my boots are going to be soaked because all the water running down off the pant legs, and they're going to go right into my boot, and that's when it starts sucking, because your feet get wet. Keep up on your intervals. If you have to save up for an interval, you know, a big interval's coming up, you got however many miles from that interval to start saving up for it. Most major service intervals are going to cost you $500 at the start, just at the start. This one here, a 500-mile service interval, is still going to cost me a couple $100. It really is. It's just the way it is, and there's nothing I can do about it except do it myself, which I don't have the equipment to do it myself. I don't have a code reader or scanner or anything that took to the Triumph service to upgrade my ECU if necessary. Plus, when I take mine in, because it has a tune on it with parameters that I like, which make it a little more aggressive, he keeps up on that and makes sure it doesn't lose its tune efficiency. My tech that works on my bike, he always keeps up on that. He'll look into it. If I tell him anything that I feel is going wrong with this thing, he'll look into it. And a lot of times he throws that in there because he's already in there. He'll just take a quick peek and say, "You're still good, man," and I don't see it on the paperwork because he's already in there. It won't take but a couple more buttons to push to make sure my tune parameters are within my liking. It has nothing to do with what Triumph wants. It's what I want for my tune. And it's still under warranty because I'm having a dealership do it. That's another. Try to do your own work and your own service, and you mess something up, could void your warranty. Do you want that? And now you got to do all the work yourself and pay for it all. It could have been something that was under warranty that you're trying to work on. So just do your service intervals. Make your bike happy. Won't make your pocketbook happy by any means, but you want that. You just bought that bike. You're in love with it. You want it to last a while. If my 2015 wasn't stolen, it'd have been paid off at the end of the year. At the end of this year, I'd have had it paid off. And it would have lasted probably 4, 5, 6 more years, if not longer, because I took care of it. Had the service intervals done and everything. Somebody landed a really sweet bike. Whether it was a bunch of parts or a full bike, they got a really nice bike out of the deal. A really nice bike. That bike was well maintained. I have all the records at home of all the intervals and all the service I had done to it and everything. I spent a bunch of money on that bike to keep it running the way I wanted it to run. And now I have to start over on this one, but I think it's worth it. So keep up those intervals. Make that bike last a long, long time. Subscribe to my channel, Sticky Side Down. Peace.